The most trusted leaders in history share one trait that terrifies most people. It's not confidence. It's not competence. It's vulnerability. And the science behind why this works will completely transform how you lead, influence, and connect with everyone around you. Here's a question that haunts every ambitious professional. Why do some leaders inspire fierce loyalty while others, equally talented, watch their teams quietly disengage? The answer lies in something called the trust equation. Developed by David Maister, Charles Green, and Robert Galford in their groundbreaking book, The Trusted Advisor. This formula has revolutionized how we understand influence. But here's what most people miss. The equation contains a hidden variable that determines everything. And that variable? It's the one thing most leaders spend their entire careers trying to hide. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your greatest perceived weakness might actually be your most powerful leadership asset. But first, let me show you what happens when leaders get this completely wrong. Let me paint you a picture. A brilliant executive, let's call her Sarah, climbs the corporate ladder with flawless precision. Every presentation polished, every decision confident, every weakness concealed. On paper, she's the perfect leader. But her team? They respect her competence, but they don't trust her. They won't bring her problems early. They won't share innovative ideas that might fail. They perform adequately, but never exceptionally. Now here's what's strange. If you're thinking that's obvious, stay with me because the reason goes far deeper than you might expect. Sarah isn't lacking emotional intelligence. She isn't cold or unkind. She's actually making a calculated choice based on everything she was taught about leadership. The problem is that everything she was taught is scientifically wrong. Research from Harvard Business School reveals something counterintuitive about human psychology. But here's where it gets fascinating. Neuroscientist Paul Zak spent over a decade studying what actually triggers trust in the human brain. His discovery? When someone shows vulnerability, it releases oxytocin in the observer's brain. That's the same chemical that bonds mothers to infants. The same chemical released when we fall in love. In other words, vulnerability doesn't just make people like you. It literally changes their brain chemistry to trust you. Now think about that for a second. Pause twos. Every time you project perfect confidence, you might actually be blocking the very neurochemical response that creates loyalty. But wait, before you start oversharing your deepest fears in your next board meeting, there's a critical distinction that separates transformative vulnerability from career-ending weakness. And this is where most advice about authenticity goes dangerously wrong. The trust equation gives us a precise framework for understanding this distinction. Let's break it down. The numerator contains three elements. Credibility is your expertise and knowledge. Reliability is your consistency and follow-through. Intimacy is your emotional safety and discretion. But the denominator, the element that divides everything else, is self-orientation. How much you appear focused on yourself versus others. Here's the mathematical truth that changes everything. You could have perfect credibility, flawless reliability, and deep intimacy. But if your self-orientation is high, trust plummets. Now imagine you're in a high-stakes negotiation. Your counterpart seems brilliant and reliable, but something feels off. That feeling? Your brain detecting high self-orientation. You sense they're in it for themselves. And this is precisely why perfectionism is so destructive. But here's what nobody tells you about perfectionism. When you never show struggle, never admit uncertainty, never reveal your learning process, you're not projecting strength. You're projecting self-orientation. Your team unconsciously interprets your perfection as a message. You care more about looking good than about genuine connection, more about your image than about their growth. This is the invisible wall that even the most talented leaders build without realizing it. And this brings us to the most counterintuitive insight in modern leadership science. The leaders who build the deepest trust aren't the ones who eliminate weakness. They're the ones who strategically reveal it. But, and this is crucial, there's a specific type of vulnerability that builds trust and a specific type that destroys it. What I'm about to share separates the leaders who transform organizations from those who merely manage them. The authors of The Trusted Advisor call it competence vulnerability versus character vulnerability. Character vulnerability means exposing personal flaws, fears, or failures unrelated to your work. This can backfire spectacularly. It raises questions about judgment and makes people uncomfortable. But competence vulnerability? This is gold. It means being honest about what you don't know in your area of expertise. It means saying, "I'm not sure. Let me find out," instead of bluffing. It means acknowledging a mistake quickly and completely rather than defending it. Here's why this works so powerfully. When you admit uncertainty in your domain, you simultaneously demonstrate two things. First, you have the confidence to be honest. Second, you prioritize truth over ego. Both of these dramatically lower your perceived self-orientation. And remember what happens when self-orientation drops. Trust skyrockets. Let me give you a real example that illustrates this perfectly. Satya Nadella transformed Microsoft's culture by starting senior meetings with one simple question. What did you learn this week? Not what did you achieve? What did you learn? This subtle shift signaled that learning, which requires admitting you didn't know something, was more valuable than performing. The result? Microsoft's market value increased by over